Well, hello everybody on YouTube. Get a link, copy a link, close the link. Anyone here? I guess that's a good question here. Nobody's around. Oh, suddenly everybody's around. Okay. Flurry of activity. So welcome to the last week of classes. And my Unity is starting off, and the other one, so it's buying me some time, or I'm buying it some time. I don't have anything kind of specific today. Again, this is we refer to these as the studio days. Trying to figure out, get everyone the answers that they need, if they have any technical issues and so on. So there's no specific lecture topic. However, here's an important thing that I should add, and I'm going to go ahead and post this. You know what? I'm gonna go pop this window out so I don't miss anything, and then I'm going to go post this over in my other. Where is it? 2020 fall. Okay, so the due date, kind of important. So what I am going to do is as follows. The due date, even though the last day of class is Friday, I will be here to answer questions on Friday, all through Friday, all that sort of thing. However, the project will be due Monday at midnight. Okay? Monday. So that means that will be the 14th, right? At midnight. All right. That is a fairly hard deadline. If you have some sort of real crazy circumstance, let me know. But that's pretty above and beyond the last day of class as it is. And grade wise, I have projects due in all of my classes, or projects due from all of my students, which is an awful lot of projects. So there definitely are consequences to those things. So that buys you a bunch of time, though. Now, what does that mean, though? Class ends on the 11th. So I do not expect, I expect you to be, kind of working on your own after that. Okay. Get your questions in, get your issues sorted by Friday during class. That doesn't mean I will be totally unavailable, but I will have limited availability just because it's getting closer and closer to the actual break. And, like I said, everything should be covered. Hopefully, you shouldn't be waiting till the very last minute. It's just going to be hopefully mostly kind of play testing, that sort of thing. Maybe you want to like some subtle things and really just, put extra polish on and make sure things are working out and all that kind of stuff. So don't wait for questions and so on. All right. Now, that means that there will be a submission on LMS, right? You have to have your submission there, which is your usual, hey, my project was like this. Tell me a little bit about it. Any kind of spoilers that you need, to make sure, oh, there's a hidden Easter eggs and all that kind of stuff. Put that, make sure that's, in there. Make sure your submission is accessible and everything on Unity Teams. Make sure that's, the version's up there. I know I've been making notes to a lot of you about, making sure the canvas works correctly, so make sure it's scaling correctly, all that sort of thing. That's a common one. Try to get, your main menus and all that kind of stuff. It's really good. The process of uploading things on itch actually is really good because you can see like what it's going to look like, not necessarily on your computer in your browser, that sort of thing. So that's a really good exercise, right? So on Monday, we're going to make sure that there's an itch.io submission. If you want to try an earlier version of that, you can always, do that between now and Friday. You can put a work in progress version, give it a run. But on Monday, you'll need those three things. Your actual, make sure your Unity collab version is up there. Make sure your itch.io final version is up there, and make sure that you've got an LMS submission. Those three things. Okay. Above and beyond that, if you want to show anything in your in the work in progress channel, stuff like that, I always, love to see work in progress, just in case, the dog eats your computer or something like that. That's, why we have all these wonderful different things, ways to submit and all that kind of stuff, so that there should be no excuses, dogs eating homework and whatnot. Should be all set for that. Okay. So, any questions? Yes. There is no final exam, if that's what you're thinking. It's yes. It basically, if I schedule a final, it winds up being that there is more leeway with regards to when things have to be submitted. If I did not schedule a final, your projects would be due absolutely, positively, definitely by Friday at midnight. Okay. So yeah, there is no final unless you want one. I have been mulling it over in my mind about what I would ask on a final. But there is no final, actual final. There's space for a final, but there is no actual final. That was the question. I will go, there is no actual final exam, right there. It's in writing there for everyone to not be stressed about now. No final exam. Let me bite my nails. Terrible habit. Any other general questions? Okay. So make sure your game has music. Make sure your game has, hits all the right tones. And by notes, I don't mean like musical notes. I just mean, in terms of, getting that moving camera, using joints and effectors, do something, kind of clever to, kind of turn the combination of those things into, traps and challenges and maybe a puzzle sort of thing. Do some basic level of inheritance. You can kind of set up a sort of template class, or think of it as being a class that is going to be used by all of your enemies, and in that class it's going to have the way that you keep track of hit points, for example, right? So they would all have some common way of dealing with hit points, or perhaps even damaging the player, right? And then this way you can derive enemies from that if you wanted to, for example. Yes. Not necessarily. Nope. Yeah, just you could have some other kind of behavior that some kind of core behavior that the enemies, or you may not use. Maybe you use inheritance in some other way. You can use inheritance in like creating power-ups. You could use inheritance for creating weapons for the player, that sort of thing. You could use inheritance for obstacles. Some obstacles might be, you might have some base where everybody starts off being a plain obstacle, and then certain obstacles cause the player damage, and certain other obstacles don't. They just exert a force on the player, something like that. Do all sorts of interesting things. All right. One thing I wanted to show everybody, because I know I've mentioned this at least in passing, but perhaps, and certainly it shows up in a variety of tutorials and things, but just in case there had been some questions about, whoa, what did Unity do? Unity stopped working. Oh, Unity. Not today, right? Maybe there's another version. Okay, so that was a previous version of Unity that it stopped working. So here's Unity that is working. And let's hope today, now I thought I was pretty good, and you've probably hopefully witnessed me last time trying to save my game. So let's hope that, yes, okay, we have the platformer still there and working this time. So one of the things that you can do if you want to sort of tune physics, for example, you might want to use something called physics materials, right? I've mentioned those things, but let's see, I'm going to give this guy some more jumping force. Was it 50 that was enough? I forget what this jumping force needed to be. Let's see. Now, he jumps up in the air, and that's one thing. But you notice he hits the ground, and he just hits the ground, right? Wouldn't it be neat if our player would be able to bounce when it hit the ground for some odd reason? Yes. Okay. Thank you. I had to mess up sooner or later. I guess I've done that more than once. Okay. Thank you very much. Everybody does that. I get, we in the various faculty chats, everyone's always like saying, yeah, you do that at least once a day, but thankfully not once a day. All right, so our player is here in the game, and our player now can jump, do a basic little jump, right? So imagine in the game, the point of this was, really not so much the player's jumping or the hero's jumping, but it was really going to be about the bouncing aspect of it. Okay, so what if I came to this hero here, and or it came to the grid, and we have the main tile map, which are these things that it can hit here. And here's the tile map. So you'll notice in the tile map collider, there is this space for a material. And in this case, it says none, physics material 2D. Now, what a material allows you to do is basically give the collider some sort of physical aspect, so it's going to do something. It's going to have an effect on the force, even though it doesn't, it's not having a effector necessarily. So imagine we were to come along, and we could say, all right, let's create a 2D material. I'm just going to put it up here in my assets folder. Or do I have a materials folder? I guess I don't. So I'll create a folder, and we'll call this folder physics materials. Okay. Open that up, and we'll say in here, I'm going to create a physics material 2D, and we'll call this bouncy. Okay. So notice they're not very, very complicated things. They just have two things, these physics 2D materials. They have friction, which means if you're moving along something, there'll be some sort of friction induced. And there's bounciness. So let's make bounciness 1. And now let's go to tile map and say that this tile map, or this one here, we want to use this bouncy material. Okay, so if I click the little cog here, it opens up, and I can then select the bouncy material. I could also drag the bouncy material over here. Now, if I hit play, and the player then jumps, you'll see now that the player is bouncing, which is challenging, of course, because I can't stop the player from bouncing. But now, anytime it touches the ground, it actually can change direction, because I said, well, if I'm grounded, I can, let's see, I can't extra bounce here. Let's see, kind of settling down. This would be challenging for sure. So as it hits the ground, I can change direction, but I can't change direction in midair. So this really becomes challenging. Okay, I gotta like warm up here. Bounce. There's some serious energy there. Whoa, and he probably fell off the screen. Okay. So that's just the simple, kind of create bounciness to there. And you can tune that to be momentum that way, right? You can kind of create these swingy surfaces, right? So that's a fun thing to do. The other one is, of course, friction. And if you have a friction on a force, let's see, I can make another create physics material 2D, and we'll call the other one sticky. And this one might have, say, a high degree of friction. And now let's try, we'll put the sticky one up there. And the bouncy one, I'm going to turn down bounciness. Now, one of the cool things, as I'm changing this material, right, whatever is using this material will be affected, right? So you've seen bounciness, this bouncy now is less bouncy. So when I go back into the game and jump, you'll see that the effect of bounciness has been reduced quite a bit. It bounces a tiny, tiny bit. And the kind of cool thing about that is it does give it a little bit of personality there, right? It's just got a little bit, it hits the ground with a little bit of bounce. Maybe we'll give him a 0.3. Kind of cool. And I'm going to come over here and make the force that he can bounce 75. So or the force he can push would be 75. So let's see. A little bit of bounce that way can hit there. And 75 is still not enough to kind of move. But we see it's kind of moving along here. And okay, not enough. So let's make this 150, give him plenty of push when he does jump. And I want to get to that sticky material up there now. There we go. 1, 2, 3. You would have thought he would jump a lot more than that. So why is that still not? Let's see. Simple controller, my jump force. Okay, it is multiplying my jump force. Let's make it something really big, 250. Now, if he gets stuck in between two bouncy surfaces, that would be interesting. But let's just get him over there. So you can see the effect of him walking here at a certain rate. And now we got him up there. And you see how fast he walks. And you'll see, oh, that's still flipping him upside down. Okay, let's get rid of that behavior. So yeah, let's not do the whole upside down thing. So, well, one way we can do that is we'll just get rid of the tag for upside down, right? We're just going to make that untagged, and it is normal ground now. All right. So get over here. And we're not really. Well, you know what? I think the reason that is, yes, I know the reason that is. It didn't change much here when I was walking on here versus walking on here. And the reason for that is because the way that the motion is scripted in my hero is that I am changing the velocity directly of the rigid body, right? I'm not applying a force. So once again, kind of the further away you are from just, kind of sort of normal physics where you don't instantaneously get that velocity, we actually should probably add a force left or right to the player. I think it's a little bit more subtle, to get it to move left and right. But then friction would have an impact on it because we wouldn't be directly setting a velocity. Instead, we would be pushing him. So it's not, let's see, I think the one impact would be if, oh no, this isn't, even in this case, he stops more or less instantaneously because of the way the joystick is working. Well, I guess that's not entirely. So if I'm walking and I let go, you see he kind of slows down. He doesn't immediately stop, right? Whereas if he comes up here, let's see, here kind of slows down a little bit. But if up at the top here, when he hits that, he immediately stops. Right? See that? Whereas if I come here and jump and land, well, I guess I kind of stuck that way too. So that's why, for example, I had to, when I'm standing still here, the bouncing worked really nicely because I jump and now I'm just using gravity when I hit the ground, right? So that's why bouncing just sort of works nicely. Whoops, and there he goes again. All right. So it's tricky. It's always like I think I mentioned in the slides when we started talking about movement, we started talking about physics. The more you rely on physics, the more realistic the motion can be. But the more you rely on physics, the harder it is to sort of script the player moving in some sort of exact way that you want, right? This left and right motion. To apply a force, I'd have to figure out, okay, how much force do I actually apply by walking? Because I'm just always adding a force, it's going to tend to accumulate and push them over to one side and things like that. So it's a little bit tricky. Don't get too carried away with that sort of thing, but you should be aware about using bounciness, especially if you've got something like maybe the character can throw items and they're completely subject to physics. So that'd be kind of cool. Maybe this player might be able to instantiate throwing a coin, or there might be coins in the environment that he knocks off of something and it hit the ground and will bounce around and do things like that. So that would be affected by stickiness and bounciness easier than the player that we're trying to script his motion with. All right. So that's a good one to be aware of. Any other questions, topics that you might think would be of use for the general consensus? Let's see. Not too many people here today, so yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, so you're having issues with when the animation plays through the whole time, you'll hit jump and it's going to wait to the end of the cycle before it changes the animation. Oh, well, you can always just like playing a sound, you would just call play on the animator. Okay. So let's do a for example here. So we have our player, it's our hero, and actually I have the sprite over here, whereas we're So the sprite is a little different than the hero object. So I'm going to add to that. I want to animate this here. So we'll create, and we'll call this hero attack. I think I have an attack somewhere in here. So we'll hero attack. So artwork, hero attack. So we'll go side, and we will grab these. Oops, grab them. All right, drag them right in here. We will make the sample rate on here 8 frames per second. And he's way too small in there because these did not import right. Apply. 16 might be too big. Oh, no, that's pretty good. All right, so now his attack would be like this. It really looks like he's kind of doing a dance move. Yeah, hero dance. But normally, we'll go with that. So normally he's doing his thing, and he's just has his dance there. So what we want to do is we want to give him a default state that is not doing his dance first off. So we'll come back to animation, and we'll click on sprite. We have hero attack, and we're going to create another clip called a hero idle. Okay. Save that one. And ooh, I didn't mean to put it there. Let's see. Let's put it there. And into that, we will find idle. And side idle is incredibly boring, but sorry, looks like that. Hero idle. There he is. We'll go to our animator. We'll make sure that hero idle is our default. All right. So you had hero attack and hero idle. So hero idle will then just be the normal state, and that's up, and he's too small there. Once again, change this 16, apply. All right, and play just to sanity check. He's just standing there doing nothing. You can kind of slide around, but he's doing nothing. File. Save. And now I want to play that hero attack animation. So I'll go to my hero simple controller. And actually, I could do it either in here, or I could actually even do it on the sprite. I could put the component. I'll put it on the sprite since that's where this all is. So say add component. Right. I could do it either way. You can, just like any component of any other game object, there are ways to, kind of let it find it. You can always do game object find, or you can get the parent of the game object and kind of move your way around there. So it's sort of a bit of preference. I'm going to put it here since I want to, I like, my personal preference is if I'm using components of an object within a script, I want to be within that game object that has those components, right? So I do it here. So we'll call this Sprite Animator or Sprite Behavior. That's a good one. And we'll make it all sound British, just like Mono Behavior does. And now, come on, Sprite Behavior. There we go. Okay, so sprite behavior. So in the update function, I'm going to say, I'm just going to get a simple key press, input.getKey, right? And I'm going to say get key down, key code, dot, what key code should we make it? We'll make it F, right? So if we get that key code, I can say get component animator, right? And I can say play. Now, you'll notice it wants to say, okay, what is the name or the state name hash? Okay, so we want to play hero attack. So if we press F, it should play hero attack. And here we go. So press play. And right. And F, we get our little hero attack. Right. Now, you'll notice it doesn't stop attacking. So you might say to yourself, well, that's awful. You want to do that. So in order to change that, you have to do a couple of things. So you'll see right now this hero, if I go to the different animations, has speed, multiplier, and so on, but it has no sort of transition here to when it ends, when it's over. So it just sort of loops and stays in that state. What I could do is say, make a transition and go back to hero idle, in which case it will probably now, depending on how this transition is set up, I can do different things. But this will go from hero attack to hero idle. I'll leave it at these defaults right now. So it should, play hero attack and then transition to that one. So F. Every time I hit F, I do does this little dance. Woo, woo. And then goes back to the idle state. And he unconditionally goes back to that state because I didn't set up any kind of traditional, conditional transition events and things like that. That's the basic way of triggering that. So in midair, he can do his little dance. You can try at least. That's kind of fun. Does that answer the question? Okay. All right. Oh. Any other questions? Nothing specific. Okay. Oh. Sure. Sure. Well, I mean, I can always in the hero has a simple controller on it, right? So I could in here, if I wanted to, the easiest way to do that would be if input get key down, key code F, right? We can do the same thing. And instead of just saying, you'll notice I took this shortcut. I said, just get component, right? And that will get a component if it's on this particular game object, right? If I use this kind of shortcut here. Now, one thing I can do, you'll notice when I said get component, it started to give me some other options here. Get component in children, for example. Okay, get components in children, right? So you can even get, if there were multiple animators or there were multiple whatever, you could actually get them. So I could say, in this case, I'm going to say get component in children, and I'm going to look for an animator, right? This will find the first child with an animator on it. And we will play hero attack. Now, to make sure that this is really working, I'm going to make sure to go ahead and go to my sprite behavior, and I'm going to remove this. And let's make sure it's simple controller. All right. So I'm back here. And if all works, right, we still get the dance move because it's going to find the child. Sounds like a Mandalorian episode. Find the child and do the right thing. Okay. There are kind of neat benefits to that. So imagine that you had a much more complex hierarchy that had multiple children that all had some sort of animation on them called hero attack or something. It had an animator on it that was called get ready or idle or things like that. You could do, for example, for each, I need to have to say animator foo or animator temp anim, we'll call it something like that. For each animator temp anim in, and now I would say get components. Oops. This would be a way to play all of the, I'll do it this way. Right. So this would take it one step further and would say, okay, and here I should say temp anim dot play. Right. So this will look through and find any components of the animator type in this hierarchy and call the hero attack on any of them. So how can I demonstrate that? Well, here's one way to do it. Because imagine you had something that would hold 6 guns. I don't know if you're doing Enter the Gungeon. So now I've got 2 sprites here, and I'm going to take one of these sprites and offset it from the other one. All right. Not very useful. It doesn't have another collider on it. The collider is over here and so on. But I do have 2 sprites, and they are both children of the hero game object here. Because it's copied, F, you'll see now they're both going to do their little animation. They're both children of the hero, right? So I did this for each, and I just made, that's my local variable, name, right? Right. So with a for each, you always say your for each iterates over a collection, which is an array, right? In this case, I'm iterating over each element in the array that get components in children animator returns, right? So I know that's returning this an animator component, right? So I give it a name. So as I iterate over that list or that array, I'm going to go through each one and do whatever. whatever I want to do. Right. So if you needed to actually iterate over multiple children, if you had again, if you had, a crazy tank that had, or a spaceship that had multiple weapons, and you wanted to play the fire animation on every one of those children, you could do that. Right? If you had a moon with satellites around it, and you want, or not a moon, a planet with moons around it, or a planet with satellites, or something like that, and you wanted to operate on, or call something on a component of that, you could do it that way. One nice thing about this, you'll notice I don't have to refer to it by name, and if it's not there and it doesn't have one of those components, this will just return null, and this for each loop won't run. So it's actually pretty safe. This is actually a pretty safe way to do it, right? Because it has built in, like, this loop will not run if there isn't an animator on at least one of the children, right? Now, there are other ways I could have done this. The kind of the brute force way would have been, okay, and the least elegant way would be, okay, let me call, I know there's a game object called Sprite here. So I could have said this. I could have said game object dot find, and it's the game object called, is it capital Sprite? See, this is why you wouldn't want to do it this way, right? We have to find, okay, it's capital Sprite. Oh, not Sprute. This is why we wouldn't want to do it this way. So game object dot find Sprite, and then you could say, from that, you could say get component, and it would be the animator, and you could call the play function and tell it, throw it back. Right, so that's another way to do that, and that would totally work. But you have to remember, this is now going through this hierarchy, and it's going through basically looking for this sprite object somewhere in this whole scene. So if I had dozens of things in here, thousands, or whatever, if I had every star in the sky, or every ship on the screen, or every enemy potentially was named hero, it would have to go through a whole lot of stuff doing this game object find. Whereas this get components in children, it limits that search to just this hierarchy, right? So it doesn't care if I had a million buildings, well, a dozen or 100, 1,000 other enemies in here. It would be faster just looking within the hero's hierarchy, as opposed to using GameObject.find. Oops. Right. So GameObject.find, that's the rookie move, right? That definitely is the rookie way of finding a game object, because it's potentially the most costly, because it has to go through hashing the name and comparing it and trying to find every game object find a game object somewhere in the hierarchy that has that. So we like to be precise when we can, but also this is kind of elegant in that it will even do it for multiple things and so on. And it doesn't avoid it avoids having, we don't need that sprite behavior script at all. We could go back over here and even delete that. We don't need that. Right. And other cool things about this is that it really doesn't have to know what scripts are on it. It's just saying, well, if that exists, if there is an animator component, do this. If there's not, then don't do it, right? So this is kind of sort of respecting very object-oriented principles. It's not going and touching things, it's using kind of the Unity agreed upon interface of get components to kind of touch things in a very structured way. So it's kind of I highly recommend doing that sort of thing. When I was saying my other rule about like, well, if a component is on the object, do it specifically there. If it was a one-off kind of thing, then, yeah, do it either way. But the nice thing about this is that I could have multiple things that, maybe it'd be overkill in this case, unless I did have two sprites in here that I wanted to animate. Okay. What other? Give me another one, and feel free if you're, if shout out things. And this way, I'll demonstrate it for everybody. Nobody. Okay. All right then. I'll let you all go about your projects. And like I said, follow the advice I laid down before. If you have any questions, make sure to get them to me this week. Friday, we'll have a little bit of a wrap-up sort of thing. But it's going to be mostly also studio time. All right. So have a great week. See you all on Friday, or unless I see you in the direct messages. All right. Take care.